14 years, 9 locksmith companies, 3 forensic specialists, and 1 steel door that had never moved an inch. At 10:06 on Tuesday morning, Vivienne Cade stood inside the original factory her father had built and listened to the third expert of the day tell her the same thing everyone else had. The safe cannot be opened without drilling. Vivienne looked at the black vault door, then at the clock. Her board meeting started at noon. At 1 o'clock, she was expected to approve the largest transaction in her company's history. $3.8 billion. 8,000 employees. A manufacturing empire her father had started with 6 machinists in a rented building. And somewhere behind that steel door was the one document that might determine whether Vivienne was even allowed to sign the deal. She looked at the expert. How certain are you? 99%. That's not certain. With respect, Miss Cade, your father designed this system to resist exactly what we're doing. Then do something different. The man hesitated. We've done everything. From the rear of the room, someone spoke. No, you haven't. Every head turned. The man standing near the freight elevator doors wore gray work pants, scratched boots, and a navy shirt with a temporary contractor badge clipped to his chest. His name was Evan Rourke. He had not been invited into the room. He was there to repair an elevator. He had a dented metal toolbox in one hand, a paper lunch bag in the other, and according to Vivienne's chief financial officer, absolutely no reason to be speaking. Gareth Sloan stared at him. Excuse me? Evan looked at the vault. The doors loaded. The safe expert frowned. What? You're trying to solve the lock. Because it's locked. Evan shook his head. No, the room went still. Vivienne stepped closer. What are you saying? Evan put his lunch on the floor. Then he pointed toward the bottom right corner of the steel door. Your problem isn't the combination. The expert laughed. Evan ignored him. The bolts are binding. Vivienne stared at the man in the contractor shirt. You know that from standing 20 feet away? Evan looked at her. About 12. Gareth stepped forward. Miss Cade, facilities workers are restricted to the west corridor. Evan nodded. That's where I was going. He picked up his lunch. Vivienne said, wait. Evan stopped. She pointed toward the safe. You said they're solving the wrong problem. Yes. Can you solve the right one? Evan looked at the steel door again, then at the experts, then down at his watch. 10:08. His daughter finished school at 3:10. Their landlord wanted a signed lease decision by 5, and the freight elevator he had been hired to repair was supposed to be running before lunch. None of those things had anything to do with the impossible safe of a billionaire. Evan should have left. Instead, he set his toolbox down. Give me 5 minutes. Gareth Sloan laughed. Vivienne did not. 8 minutes later, Evan Rourke turned the safe's handle. And for the first time in 14 years, something moved behind the wall. But opening the door would prove to be the smallest thing hidden inside that room. Because one of the papers waiting behind the steel had Evan's own father's name on it. And one man standing beside Vivienne Cade had spent years making sure nobody ever saw it. If you have ever watched a person's job title matter more than what they actually know, stay with Evan. At 5:52 that morning, Evan was arguing with a 9-year-old over a banana. His daughter sat at their kitchen table with her arms crossed. I'm not eating it. It's a banana. It's brown. 1 spot. 3 spots. Still legally a banana. Piper Rourke narrowed her eyes. Would you eat it? Evan looked at the banana. No. Piper pushed it toward him. Exactly, he sighed. Apple? Yes, peanut butter? Yes, banana? No, you drive a hard bargain. I learned from you. That part was true. Maybe too true. Piper had her mother's dark hair, her father's stubborn mouth, and a habit of remembering every promise Evan made, especially the ones he wished she would forget. He packed the apple into her lunch. Their apartment kitchen was barely large enough for 2 people. Old cabinets. A refrigerator that hummed loudly at night. 1 narrow window facing the brick wall of the building next door. They lived in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, 6 minutes from Piper's elementary school. Evan liked the neighborhood. Piper loved it. Her friends lived nearby. Her art teacher knew her by name. The bakery downstairs saved broken cookies for her after school. It had taken 3 years for the place to feel permanent. Then the letter came. Evan glanced at it. It sat beneath his coffee mug. Notice of lease renewal. Current rent, $475. New rent, $1,960. Evan made $27 an hour when his contractor gave him full weeks. Some weeks were full, some were not. $500 more every month was not complicated mathematics. It was impossible mathematics. Piper followed his eyes. Are we moving? Evan looked at her. Eat your apple. You haven't cut it, I will. Are we? He picked up the knife. Piper, you keep saying my name when you don't want to answer. That isn't true. Evan, he stopped. She smiled faintly. He did not. Piper looked down. I don't want to change schools. I know. Maisie's moving to 4th grade with me. I know. And Mrs. Dobson said I can be art helper. I know. And Mom's tree is here. That one hurt. Evan stopped cutting. 3 blocks from the apartment was Slater Park. Near the pond stood a young red maple. There was a small brass plaque beneath it. Rebecca Rowark, 1986-2022, she made small things feel important. Piper visited the tree every Sunday. Sometimes she talked, sometimes she drew, sometimes she sat. Evan never asked what she said. Mom's tree isn't moving, he said. But we might. He placed the apple slices into a container. I'm working on it. Piper looked at him. That's not a promise. No, why not? Because Evan had learned promises could become debts. Rebecca's cancer taught him that. Every time he said everything would be okay, he meant it. Every time he was wrong, Piper remembered. So now Evan chose words carefully. I promise I'm going to do everything I can. Piper thought, then nodded. Okay. He slid the lunch into her backpack. She stood, then stopped beside the kitchen counter. A small metal object sat near Evan's wallet. Piper picked it up. What is this? Evan turned. A brass feeler gauge. Old, 6 folding blades. The case was scratched almost smooth. He took it gently. Grandpa's. Your dad? Yeah, what does it do? Measures gaps. Why? Because sometimes tiny spaces matter. She frowned. That's boring. Most useful things are. Mom wasn't boring. Evan smiled. No, Piper hugged him. Quickly, then grabbed her backpack. Pick me up today? 3:10. You said Mr. Rollins might need you late. I'll be there. Promise? Evan looked at her. Promise, she smiled. Good, the door closed. Evan stood alone. He looked at the lease notice, then at the old brass gauge. His father had carried that gauge for 32 years. Thomas Rourke. Machinist, toolmaker, problem solver. And according to every story Evan had heard growing up, a man who had destroyed his own career because he could not leave well enough alone. Thomas had died 6 years earlier. They had spoken twice during his final year. Both conversations ended badly. Evan still carried the gauge. Families were complicated that way. At 6:41, he loaded his toolbox into the back of his van. The van belonged to Rollins Industrial Services. On the side, millwright, elevator, machinery repair. Below that, a smaller line, we fix what stops. Evan hated the slogan. His supervisor loved it. At 7:18, Evan pulled through the gates of Cade Motion Systems. The original Pawtucket plant had opened in 1964. Back then it had been a machine shop. Now it occupied 12 buildings along the river. Precision motors, industrial robotics, naval guidance components, aircraft actuators, high-tolerance gear systems. Cade products lived inside machines most people never saw. The company founder, Harlan Cade, started with 6 machinists. By the time he died, the company employed nearly 7,000. His daughter, Vivienne, had expanded it further. Plants in Rhode Island, Ohio, Texas, Poland, Japan. Her personal fortune was estimated above $5 billion. But the original plant remained the symbolic center. Old brick. Tall windows. Wooden beams. New equipment tucked inside old walls. Evan had worked there 3 times before. Never in the executive building. Never near the founder's office. Today he was assigned to Freight Elevator 4. The elevator sat beside the restored 1964 machine hall. It had stopped level with the second floor the night before. Main drive worked. Door circuit worked. Brake would not release. Simple job. Probably his supervisor Glenn Rollins met him near security. Morning, need this one fast. Why? Board circus. What board circus? Glenn pointed toward the old machine hall. Big sale. Evan frowned. Cade selling? Company? Whole company? That's what everyone's saying. Evan looked toward employees crossing the courtyard. Some had worked there longer than he had been alive. To who? Astor Row Capital. He knew the name. Private equity. Industrial acquisitions. Closures, consolidations, debt. He knew only what newspapers said. Glenn continued. They've got press coming, lawyers, board members, all kinds of people who don't know how elevators work, but get angry when one doesn't. Good. Why good? Job security. Glenn laughed, then lowered his voice. Stay away from the founder's library. Why? Safe guys. Evan looked at him. What safe guys? Glenn regretted mentioning it. Forget it. Too late. There's some old vault. Here? Founder built it into his office. Nobody's opened it since he died. Evan stared toward the old machine hall. How long? I don't know. 10 years. 14. Evan looked at him. How do you know? Glenn shrugged. Guy at security. Evan nodded. Glenn pointed at him. Do not get curious. I'm never curious. That is a lie. Probably Glenn handed him a work authorization. Elevator at 742. Evan removed the elevator control panel. The problem was not the brake. It was a position interlock. The carriage had stopped 3/4 of an inch above the floor sensor, enough to keep the brake release circuit open. He reset it manually, then traced why it had happened. A worn guide shoe. Replace shoe. Realign test. 2 hours. Maybe 3. At 8:11, a young Cade maintenance technician named Luis Barreto appeared with coffee. You, Evan? Depends. Glenn said you know old elevators. Glenn says lots of things. Luis handed him a coffee. For you. Evan accepted. Then yes. Luis crouched beside the open panel. You think drive's bad? No brake? No. Controller? No. Luis looked confused. What is bad? Guide shoe. That tiny block? Yes. That shut down a 4-ton elevator? Yes. Luis frowned. That's stupid. Evan smiled. Machines don't care about scale. What does that mean? Little thing can stop big thing. Luis nodded slowly, then pointed toward the machine hall. Like that safe. Evan looked at him. Glenn told me not to ask. Then don't. What kind? Luis grinned. You are asking. I asked what kind. That's asking. Evan returned to the elevator. Luis leaned against the wall. My grandfather worked here. Okay. He says Mr. Cade designed the vault himself. Was he a locksmith? No, then probably not. Grandpa says he did. People say founders do everything. Luis laughed. He says nobody knows what's in it. Then how do they know it's important? Letter. What letter? Luis lowered his voice, even though nobody was nearby. Harlan Cade left instructions. Something inside has to be opened before company changes control. Evan looked at him. You're selling. Luis stopped smiling. Looks like. You okay? Luis shrugged. My dad works building 6. That doesn't answer. My uncle works assembly. Still doesn't. My wife is in quality. Evan understood. One company. Whole family. Private equity acquisition was not financial news to Luis. It was dinner. Mortgage. Health insurance. School shoes. Luis nodded toward the machine hall. If whatever's in that vault can stop the sale, I hope someone opens it. Evan closed the elevator panel. Don't build your life around locked boxes. Luis smiled sadly. Easy for you to say. Evan thought about the lease notice. No, not really. At 9:04, the first unusual sound came from the founder's library. Metal hammering, not hard. Controlled. Evan paused, then kept working. 9:18. A drill spun briefly. Stopped. 9:31. Raised voices. Luis appeared again. First guy quit. Didn't quit. Failed. Different. You want to see? No, come on. No, 2 minutes. Evan looked at the guide shoe in his hand, then toward the library. No, Luis grinned. You're scared Glenn will catch you. I'm scared I'll become involved. Same thing. At 9:47, Glenn radioed. Evan, go. Need you inside machine hall. Evan closed his eyes. Luis smiled. Destiny, stop saying things. They carried tools through the old hall. The room looked almost like a museum. Harlan Cade had insisted the company preserve the first milling machines. Manual lathes, old drill presses, tool cabinets with brass labels, black and white photographs, workers standing beside machines, some wearing ties, some covered in oil. At the far end stood a glass-walled library. Inside were 12 people. Evan recognized Vivian Cade immediately, not because he had met her, because her photograph was in every lobby. She looked different in person, smaller than the corporate portraits, more tired, still commanding. Beside her stood Gareth Sloan, chief financial officer. Tall, silver-haired, expensive charcoal suit. One of the men frequently quoted in business articles about the sale. 3 outside safe experts stood near the wall. Equipment everywhere. Cameras, meters, borescope cases, a vibration sensor. The vault door was enormous. 6 feet high, 4 feet wide. Black steel, no manufacturer's badge. Large chrome handle, combination dial above it. Evan looked once, then twice. His pace slowed. Glenn grabbed his elbow. No, what? Your face. What face? The same face you make when somebody assembled something wrong. I don't have a face. You have a face. Glenn pointed toward an electrical cabinet beside the library. Power flicker. Safe guys claim our circuit is unstable. Evan opened the cabinet. Tested voltage. Stable, ground, stable, neutral, good. He looked through the glass while waiting for a load cycle. One expert rotated the vault dial. Slowly, another watched instruments. The third stared at a laptop. Evan watched the vault door, not the dial. Door edge. Hinge, handle, lower frame. Something caught his eye. A scrape, very small. Polished line near the bottom corner. Fresh, he crouched slightly. The line ran upward at an angle, metal rubbing metal. He looked toward the top. Gap wider, bottom narrower. Door had dropped, maybe frame, maybe building, maybe only a few thousandths. But with 4 large horizontal bolts, a few thousandths could be plenty. The safe expert turned the handle. Nothing, he swore. Evan frowned. The handle moved, not much, maybe 3 degrees, then stopped hard. That was not a lock stopping the handle. That was a loaded bolt. He knew the feeling. He had felt it hundreds of times. Evan straightened. Glenn saw him. Do not. I didn't say anything. You're about to. No. Inside the library, Vivian spoke. How long? The lead expert removed his headphones. Miss Cade, we've isolated the wheel pack. And? The combination mechanism is responding inconsistently. Meaning? Either internal corrosion or deliberate false gates. Can you open it? Not non-destructively. Gareth Sloan looked at his watch. We don't have time. Vivian looked at him. You've said that 6 times. Because the board votes in 2 hours. I know when my board votes. We have a transaction team waiting. I know. The buyer expects execution today. I know. Gareth lowered his voice. Vivienne, your father has been dead 14 years. Her expression went cold. What does that have to do with anything? This company cannot continue operating as if Harlan might walk back through the door. Nobody answered. Gareth continued. The safe is a symbol. Vivienne looked at it. No. It's steel in a wall. My father's letter named it. Your father's letter was written while he was dying. Careful, Gareth stopped. Vivienne turned to the expert. One more attempt. He sighed. Miss, Cade, 1. The expert reset the dial. Evan returned his attention to the electrical panel. Not his problem. Then the expert turned the handle harder. Evan heard a faint groan through the steel frame. He spoke before thinking. Don't force it. Silence. Glenn closed his eyes. Gareth turned. Who said that? Evan looked up. Too late. He raised his hand. Gareth opened the library door. Who are you? Evan, why are you speaking? Force it and you might mushroom the bolt edge. The expert frowned. Excuse me? Evan nodded toward the door. Bottom bolts loaded. The man looked at him. Based on what? Door sag. The expert stared. We measured frame alignment. How? Laser, open or loaded? What? Evan put his meter away. Never mind. Gareth stepped toward Glenn. Your people are here to address electrical power. Glenn nodded quickly. Yes, sir, the power is fine, Evan said. Gareth stared. Evan continued. Stable under load. Good. Gareth pointed toward the hall. Then you're finished. Evan picked up his tools. Yep, he started walking. Vivian's voice stopped him. You said door sag. Evan turned. She walked closer. Explain, Gareth said. Vivian, she ignored him. Evan pointed at the lower right edge. Polish mark. The expert looked, from prior entry attempts. No, how can you know that? Direction. Evan stepped closer but remained outside the glass. The door is dragging inward and down. Opening attempts would mark outward. The expert crouched. Evan continued. Handle moves a few degrees. Yes, if the wheel pack were locked, you wouldn't get that much bolt bar travel. The man's face shifted. Evan noticed. So you felt it. The expert stood. Felt what? Stop isn't clean. The man did not answer. Evan nodded. Loaded bolt. Vivian looked between them. Is he right? The expert hesitated. That hesitation did more than an answer. Gareth sighed. This is absurd. Evan picked up his toolbox. Probably, Vivian said. Wait, he did. What do you do here? Elevators, she stared. You repair elevators. Today, what normally? Machinery, safes? No, the expert interrupted. Miss Cade, I strongly recommend we not introduce an uncredentialed contractor into a forensic opening. Evan nodded. Good recommendation. Vivian looked at him. You agree? Yes, then why did you interrupt? Didn't want him damaging the bolt. The expert's face reddened. I'm not damaging anything. Okay, do you understand the tolerances inside a 4-bolt vault mechanism? Yes, from elevators? Evan looked at him. No, Vivian noticed. From where? Evan glanced at his watch. 10:06. He had already lost 15 minutes. Long time ago. Gareth stepped forward. This is done. The expert turned to Vivian. Without destructive access, the safe is effectively impossible. Evan looked at the door. Vivian noticed again. What? Nothing, you disagree? He sighed. Yes, Gareth laughed. Vivian did not. You think it's possible? Yes, how long? Evan thought. To prove whether I'm right? Yes, 5 minutes. The safe expert actually laughed. 5 minutes. Maybe 8. Gareth looked at Vivian. Please, Vivian studied Evan. Work shirt. Toolbox, no suit. No reputation. Nothing to make trusting him rational. Then she looked at the safe. 14 years. She said 5. Gareth turned. Vivian, 5 minutes. The expert threw his hands up. This compromises chain of custody. He doesn't touch the lock. Evan looked at her. I need to touch the door. You said, not the dial. She considered. Fine, the expert said. I won't be responsible. Evan replied, then don't be. The man stared. Evan set his toolbox down, opened it. Wrenches, dial indicator, small machinist level, inspection light, brass wedges, the old folding feeler gauge. Vivian watched him remove it. That's your equipment? Some, the expert looked unimpressed. No electronic diagnostics? Evan unfolded the thinnest blade, 0.02 inch. The expert looked away. Evan crouched at the bottom edge of the vault. He slid the blade into the door gap. Top left, easy, top right. Easy, midpoint, slight drag. Bottom stopped. He tried the next thinner blade. Stopped. He looked at the frame, then at the floor. Old terrazzo. A hairline crack crossed one corner. He asked, when was this room renovated? Vivienne frowned. 2014? After your father died? Yes. Safe opened before renovation? No. Floor replaced? Yes. Wall? Reinforced, Evan nodded. There, the vault frame had probably shifted during reinforcement. Not much. Enough. He placed the small level against the door. Checked vertical. Then frame. Difference tiny, but real. Jack, Louise, standing near the hall, looked around. What kind? Toe jack. Maintenance cage. Glenn said, Evan. Evan turned. What? You have one in the elevator kit. Right, Glenn shook his head. Unbelievable, Louise ran. The safe expert stepped forward. You cannot jack a vault door. Evan stood. I'm not lifting the door. Then what? Unloading it. Same thing. No. Evan pointed at the hinge. Door weighs maybe 2,800 pounds. The expert nodded reluctantly. Closer to 32. Fine. 3-point hinge system. Yes. Bottom hinge carrying too much. The expert looked. Evan continued. When room reinforcement shifted the frame, the door settled into the lower bolt pocket. That is speculation. Yes, Gareth laughed. Vivienne looked at Evan. You admit that, of course. How will you know? If unloading pressure lets the handle move. Luis arrived with a small hydraulic toe jack. Evan placed a brass load plate beneath the lower edge. The expert objected again. You need engineering approval. Evan looked at Vivienne. It's your safe. She looked at the expert. Could this damage it? He hesitated. Improper lifting could. Vivienne looked at Evan. Will you lift it? No, then? Take maybe 200 pounds off the hinge, out of 3,200. Yes, do it. Evan positioned the jack. One small pump. Nothing. Second, he watched the gap. Third, the feeler gauge slid slightly deeper. He stopped. That's enough. He stood. Turned the handle. The expert folded his arms. You do it. Evan looked at Vivienne. She nodded. He gripped the chrome handle. Did not touch the dial. Slow pressure. The handle moved 3 degrees. 5. Then stopped. Evan smiled faintly. 1 bolt. Vivienne's eyes narrowed. What? Still loaded. He crouched. Moved the jack plate half an inch inward. 1 pump. The door shifted so slightly nobody saw it. Evan did. He tried the handle. 10 degrees. Then 15. A heavy metallic sound came from inside the wall. Clunk. Everyone froze. The safe expert stepped closer. What did you just do? Unloaded the bottom bolt. The expert stared at the handle. Evan kept turning. Another sound. Clunk, then another. 3 bolts. 1 remained. Top. Evan stopped. He looked at the upper door gap. Tighter now. Frame twist. He lowered the jack slightly. Not completely. The door settled. Then he placed 1 thin brass wedge near the lower hinge side. No force, just support. He turned the handle again. The 4th bolt withdrew. The room went completely silent. Vivienne whispered, Is it open? Evan released the handle. Lock is. The expert stared at the dial. But the combination, Evan looked at him. You solved it. What? Your last sequence. The man frowned. Evan continued. The lock released. Bolts couldn't move. The expert's mouth opened. Then closed. Evan nodded toward the diagnostic equipment. Everything you were hearing was probably correct. The man looked at the vault, then at his own instruments. Vivienne checked the wall clock. 10:14. 8 minutes. Gareth Sloane's expression had changed. Not embarrassment, something closer to alarm. Evan noticed. Vivienne walked toward the safe. Open it. Evan shook his head. You what? Your father's safe. She stared. Evan stepped aside. Vivienne placed her hand on the handle, turned, the bolts withdrew fully. She pulled. Nothing, Evan said, door seal. She looked at him. Pull harder? No. He took a small rubber mallet. Tapped the edge once. Twice a faint crack of old gasket material. Vivienne pulled again. The door moved. 1 inch. Then 3. Cold, dry air escaped from 14 years of darkness. Nobody spoke. Vivienne opened her father's safe. Inside were no gold bars, no piles of cash, no jewels, 5 shelves, metal document boxes, 2 leather books, a wooden machinist's chest, an old photograph, and 1 white envelope standing upright in the center. Vivienne, her father's handwriting. She stopped breathing. Evan stepped backward. This was no longer his problem. He began packing. Gareth Sloane moved quickly toward the safe. Vivienne held out 1 arm. No, he stopped. We need counsel. We need privacy. This may contain transaction material. My father wrote my name. Vivienne, out the room, became still. Gareth looked toward the document boxes. Then at Vivienne. At least let legal remain. She turned. Everyone out. The forensic specialists began collecting equipment. Glenn grabbed Luis. Evan closed his toolbox. Vivienne looked at him. Not you. Evan frowned. Why? You opened it. No, he did. She pointed at the safe expert. He solved the combination. And you solved the door. Elevator still broken. I'll buy your company an elevator. Glenn smiled hopefully. Evan looked at him. Don't. Vivienne almost smiled. Then looked toward her father's envelope. Stay 5 minutes. Evan did not want to. But something on the bottom shelf had caught his eye. A blue metal file box. Across the front, Founder's Shop Original 6. Underneath were 6 names. Harlan Cade, Arthur Marino, Joseph Lasky, Samuel Brennan, Thomas Rourke. Evan stopped. His father's name. Not similar. Not another man. Thomas Rourke. Vivienne saw his face. What? Evan did not answer. She followed his eyes. Then read. Thomas Rourke. She looked at him. Your father? Evan's jaw tightened. Yeah, Gareth Sloane was still near the doorway. He turned. For 1 second, fear appeared across his face, then vanished. Evan saw it. Vivienne did too. Everyone out, she repeated. Gareth said, I strongly advise out the doors closed. Only Vivienne and Evan remained. The safe stood open between them. For several seconds, neither moved. Vivienne took the white envelope. Her hands shook. She looked annoyed by that. Evan understood. People who controlled companies did not like discovering their hands still belonged to human beings. You don't have to read it now, he said. She looked at him. I've waited 14 years. Then another 5 minutes won't hurt. Why? Because you're shaking. She stared. Evan continued. Whatever's in there isn't going anywhere. Vivienne lowered the envelope. Do you always tell people what to do? No, you've done it repeatedly today. Bad morning. She almost laughed. Instead, she looked at the blue file box. Your father worked for mine? Evan looked at the label. Apparently you didn't know. I knew he worked machine shops. This one? He didn't talk about Cade. Why? Evan looked away. He didn't talk about much. Vivienne approached the file box. May I? It's your safe. She lifted it. Heavy, set it on a table. Opened the lid. Inside were 6 personnel files, old photographs, patent diagrams, notebooks, payroll cards, a small reel of microfilm. Vivienne found Thomas Rourke. She handed Evan the folder. He did not take it. That's company property. It has your father's name. Still, Evan. He looked at her. Take it. He did. The photograph was from 1967. 6 men standing beside an enormous milling machine. Harlan Cade was young. Thin, smiling beside him stood Thomas Rourke. 23 years old. Hair still black. Arms folded. Same expression Evan remembered from childhood. Skeptical, unimpressed, alive, Evan sat. He had not expected that. Vivienne watched quietly. My father looks happy. Evan nodded. So does yours. No, Vivienne looked again. Thomas was almost smiling. That's happy for him. She understood. Evan turned the page. Employment record. Toolmaker. Precision gear development. Then, CO inventor, Series 4 harmonic reduction drive. Evan stopped. What? Vivienne leaned closer. The Series 4 drive was the mechanism that made Cade Motion famous. Compact precision gearing, robotics, aircraft, satellite tracking. The technology had generated billions over decades. Public company histories credited Harlan Cade and Cade Engineering. Not Thomas Rourke. Not 5 machinists. Evan Reed again. CO inventor. Then another paper. Royalty participation agreement. 6 names. Each assigned a percentage of licensing revenue. Evan's stomach dropped. That's impossible. Vivienne looked at him. Why? My father was broke. The words came out harder than he intended. Vivienne said nothing. Evan continued. He worked maintenance until his hands got too bad. He turned another page, lost the house when I was 16. Another, he borrowed money from me when Rebecca got sick. His voice tightened. If he owned royalty rights in Cade, he wasn't broke. Vivienne looked toward the safe. Unless he never got paid. Evan looked at her. That possibility was worse. They searched. Another document. Royalty account suspension, 1987, reason dispute pending. Another, legal review. Another, confidential, founder only. Evan opened it. A memo from Harlan Cade. Thomas, you were right. The outside investors want the 6-man agreement removed before the financing round. I told them no. Sloan and Mercer Legal says the old contracts are enforceable. We need to resolve this before anyone signs the recapitalization. Don't quit. Give me a week. Harlan. Evan read the surname again. Sloan. Vivienne read it too. Her face changed. Gareth's father. Evan looked at her. What? Edmund Sloan handled our financing in the 80s. Evan looked toward the closed library door. Gareth Sloan, Chief Financial Officer, son of the attorney involved. Vivienne opened the next paper. A resignation letter. Thomas Rourke. September 3rd, 1987. Harlan, you keep telling me to wait. The contracts are gone from payroll. The men were told they never existed. Your investors know. Your lawyer knows. If you sign the financing this way, you've chosen them. Don't call me when you decide you didn't. Tom. Evan closed his eyes. That sounded exactly like his father. The anger, the certainty, the ability to turn one paragraph into a permanent war. Vivienne whispered, my father did sign. Evan looked at her. She nodded. The 1987 recapitalization saved the company and erased the 6 agreements. Apparently, Evan laughed once. No humor. So my father was right. Vivienne did not answer. Evan looked at the photograph again. For most of his childhood, Thomas Rourke was the man who could not hold a stable job, the man who fought supervisors, the man who told everyone else they were cowards, the man who taught Evan to measure twice, speak once, and never sign work he did not trust. Evan had spent years trying not to become him. Now a file hidden 14 years inside steel said Thomas had walked away from a company worth billions because someone erased his name. Vivienne opened another folder. There's more. At the bottom was a ledger. Handwritten royalty calculations. Amounts owed to the original 6. Year by year. Interest, licensing, assignments. By 2008, Thomas Rourke's accumulated share exceeded $18,420,000. Evan stared. Vivienne sat across from him. Your father was owed $18 million. No, Evan, no, that's what this says. My father died with $9,000. Vivienne did not know what to say. Evan closed the ledger. Did your father pay any of them? She searched. 3 names had settlements. 2 died before resolution. Thomas remained unresolved. Then a notation dated 6 months before Harlan's death. T. Rourke located. Refuses meeting. Evan looked away. That sounded right, too. Vivienne whispered, my father tried. Evan's jaw tightened. Trying isn't pain. No, he knew. Yes, and he left it locked in a safe. Vivienne looked toward her envelope. Maybe Evan stared at her. She met his eyes. You think I knew. I don't know what you knew. I knew nothing about this. You're CEO. Now 14 years. I took over after he died. Evan stood. Exactly, she stood too. What does that mean? It means 14 years is a long time not to know why 6 names disappeared from your company's history. Her expression hardened. There are 8,000 employees. There were 6 at the beginning. I was 9 when the 1987 financing happened. You're not 9 now. Silence. The accusation landed. Too hard. Evan knew it. Vivienne looked away first. My father did not tell me everything. Clearly, she picked up the envelope. Maybe this does. Evan packed his father's file, then stopped. He put it back on the table. Legal needs to see it. Vivienne frowned. You don't want a copy? Later, $18 million. Later, how are you this calm? Evan looked at her. I'm not. Then he walked toward the door. Vivienne spoke. 5 minutes. He stopped. You promised. I didn't. You agreed. Evan sighed. Fine. She opened Harlan's letter. The first line made her sit down. Vivi, if you're reading this, somebody finally proved me wrong about how long good steel can keep a bad decision hidden. Her eyes filled immediately. Evan looked away. Vivienne continued silently. Halfway down, she stopped. What? Evan asked. She handed him the page. He hesitated. It's addressed to you. Read the bottom. He did. There are 3 things in the safe that matter. The first is the original 6 ledger. I cheated those men when I let investors frighten me into calling ownership compensation. Arthur and Sam settled. Joe died angry. Walter's family took what I could arrange. Thomas never did. He was the only one who refused every attempt I made to convert what he owned into charity. He said a debt renamed is still a debt. He was right. Evan stopped. His throat tightened. The letter continued. The second is a voting agreement. If Cade Motion is ever sold outside the family, the unresolved original 6 interests must be satisfied before transfer. Not as severance, not as gifts, as ownership. The third is for you, Vivienne. Do not protect the company from the truth. If the truth damages it, I damaged it first. Fix what I left. Dad, Evan set the letter down. Vivienne's face had gone pale. The sale. He nodded. You can't close. Not without resolving the claims. How much? Ask your lawyers. She was already moving toward the door. Then Evan stopped her. Gareth. Vivienne looked at him. What? He knew something. You saw him. Yes, so did I. She opened the door. Gareth Sloane stood 20 feet away speaking with legal counsel. He saw Vivienne. Then the open safe behind her. His face tightened. Vivienne said, conference room. He smiled professionally. Did you find anything relevant? Conference room. Vivienne, now at 10:42, 7 people sat around a walnut table. Vivienne, Gareth, General Counsel Rachel Penn, 2 board representatives, Evan, and an outside transaction attorney. Evan had objected. Vivienne insisted. His father's claim is in the documents. That ended the objection. Rachel Penn reviewed the original 6 agreement. Then the 1987 correspondence. Then Harlan's letter. Her expression grew more serious with every page. Finally, she looked at Vivienne. We cannot sign the sale agreement today. Gareth leaned forward. Based on an unsigned historical memo? Rachel looked at him. The royalty participation agreements are signed. They were superseded. Show me. Gareth hesitated. Corporate restructuring records. Show me the releases. Our archived council records. Show me. Gareth's jaw tightened. The 6 received compensation. Evan spoke. Thomas didn't. Gareth looked at him. This is a corporate legal matter. My father's name is on the corporate legal matter. Vivienne said, let him speak. Gareth folded his hands. The 1987 recapitalization created a clean capital structure. Evan looked at him. That's finance language. Gareth's expression cooled. 4. Someone lost something. Rachel Penn looked down to hide a reaction. Gareth continued. Every major company has early agreements that become obsolete. Signed ownership becomes obsolete. Mr. Rourke, you are not an attorney. No, then perhaps leave legal interpretation to people who are. Evan nodded. Fine, that response irritated Gareth more. Vivienne asked, Did you know? Gareth looked at her. Know what? About the original 6. I knew your father had early compensation disputes. Ownership, semantics. Rachel Penn spoke immediately. No, everyone turned. She continued. Ownership and compensation are not semantics. Gareth's mouth tightened. Vivienne watched him. Your father handled the 1987 recapitalization. One of many lawyers. The memo names him. Yes. Did he tell you? No, never? No. Evan watched. Gareth answered too cleanly. Vivienne saw it too. She pushed the ledger forward. Then explain this. Gareth looked. At the bottom of several later pages appeared initials. GS. Not Harlan's handwriting. Dates. Gareth did not touch the ledger. Vivienne asked, Those yours? No. Rachel Penn pulled the book closer. Accounts were updated after Harlan's death. Gareth said nothing. Who had access to the safe? No one. Then how were calculations added? Those could predate his death. The ink? Rachel looked toward outside counsel. We'll test it. Gareth's face tightened. Vivienne said, You knew. No, you knew the claims existed. I knew there were historical contingencies. Historical contingencies. Yes, worth potentially tens of millions. Potentially that prevent today's sale. Gareth leaned forward. Vivienne, listen carefully. No. We have a buyer prepared to assume $600 million of debt. Debt you helped arrange. Because the Ohio expansion failed. Expansion you recommended. Which the board approved. Because your projections said 18% growth. The market changed. Evan watched their exchange. This was the private pressure Vivienne had been carrying. The company was not simply being sold for profit. It was leveraged. Expansion debt. Declining orders. A transaction might actually save jobs. That made the problem harder. Gareth continued. If this sale collapses, our credit agreement can trigger. Rachel looked at him. Not immediately. Within 30 days. Vivienne sat. How bad? Gareth looked at the others. Very. Evan saw her anger become fear. Real fear. 8,000 jobs. Her father's company. A sale she may not want, but believed necessary. Gareth lowered his voice. You wanted the safe open because you hoped Harlan left you some miracle. Vivienne stared. He didn't. Gareth pointed at the documents. He left you a lawsuit. Evan looked at the ledger. Gareth continued. We can litigate validity after closing. Rachel said, No. Why? Because Harlan's voting agreement explicitly makes satisfaction a condition precedent to outside transfer. Gareth's face reddened. Then get a waiver. Rachel looked at Evan. Then at the ledger. From every surviving claimant or heir. Gareth turned toward Evan. There it was. A different look now. Calculation, not contempt. Evan felt it. Vivienne did too. Gareth softened his voice. Mr. Rourke. Evan almost laughed. First time he had used Mr. Yeah? You may be owed something substantial. Apparently a dispute of this age could take years. Probably your father declined prior settlements. Sounds like him. You have a daughter? Evan's face changed. Why? Gareth smiled slightly. Public records. You're a claimant. Counsel will need family information. Vivienne's eyes hardened. Gareth continued. There is a practical solution. Evan waited. We settled Thomas Rourke's claim today. $5 million. The room became silent. Evan stared. Gareth continued. Guaranteed, Rachel Penn interrupted. You do not have authority. The board can authorize. Vivienne said nothing. Gareth looked at Evan. $5 million. Evan thought of the apartment. Piper's school. Rebecca's tree. No rent worry. No contract work. College, security, everything, Gareth continued. Your father died without seeing a dollar. Evan's jaw tightened. You don't need to repeat that. I'm saying you can correct it. $5 million on an $18 million ledger. An unverified ledger. Then, why offer 5? Gareth stopped. Evan leaned back. That's what I thought. Vivienne looked at him. Gareth's calm started breaking. You are letting emotion interfere with reality. Evan nodded. Probably. Your father made that mistake. Evan went still. What? Gareth realized too late. Nobody spoke. Evan's voice became quieter. You knew him. Gareth looked away. You just said he made that mistake, based on the correspondence. No, Evan pointed at the papers. Nothing in there says emotion. Gareth's jaw tightened. Evan continued. You knew him. Vivienne stared at Gareth. How? Silence, Gareth. He stood. We are wasting time. Vivienne stood too. Sit, this meeting, sit down. He stared. Vivienne's voice changed. Not loud. Hard. You have worked for me 19 years. Nothing. I trusted you with every financial record in this company. Nothing. My father trusted your father. Gareth slowly sat. Vivienne asked again, How did you know Thomas Rourke? Gareth looked at Evan, then at the table. I met him once. Evan's heart thudded. When? 2008. Evan stared. My father was still alive. Yes, why? Gareth rubbed his jaw. Harlan wanted to settle. How much? 10 million. Evan laughed bitterly. Ledger says 18, at the time. Did Dad refuse? Immediately, what did he say? Gareth looked at him. You really want to know? Yes, he said he didn't want Harlan's money. Evan closed his eyes. Of course. Gareth continued. He wanted the ownership record corrected. Evan opened his eyes. What does that mean? He wanted Cade to publicly recognize the original six as co-founders and co-inventors. Vivienne sat slowly. Gareth continued. Harlan wouldn't. Why? Because patents had been financed, licensed, and pledged for decades. Rachel Penn whispered, chain of title exposure. Gareth nodded. Correcting historical ownership could have opened claims across every license agreement. Evan stared. So your solution was pretend they never existed. My father's solution. And yours. Gareth did not answer. Vivienne looked sick. Evan continued. Why update the ledger? Gareth's eyes moved toward Vivienne. Because Harlan instructed me to. When? Before he died, and after? I continued. Why? So we'd no exposure. Rachel Penn said, You maintained liability calculations personally? Yes, without disclosing them to legal? Gareth's voice hardened. Harlan considered the matter private. Harlan died. Gareth said nothing. Rachel continued. You had an obligation to disclose material contingent liabilities. Not if claims were dormant. They weren't extinguished. Nobody pursued them. Evan leaned forward. My father was alive until 6 years ago. Gareth looked at him. He never sued. Maybe because Harlan kept promising to fix it. Silence. Gareth's expression said Evan was right. At 11:19, the meeting broke. The board vote was postponed. The sale announcement was suspended. Astor Row Capital was told a newly discovered historical ownership issue required review. The buyer threatened to walk. Vivienne let them. For now. Evan finally returned to the freight elevator. Glenn stared when he saw him. Well? Well? What? You opened the billionaire's impossible safe. Door was sagging. Glenn stared. You opened a safe nobody opened for 14 years and you're saying door was sagging. Yes, that's it? Mostly Luis appeared. What was inside? Paper, treasure? Depends who you ask. Money? Paper about money. How much? Evan picked up a wrench. Elevator. Luis looked at Glenn. He's impossible. Glenn laughed. Apparently safes aren't. At 11:34, Evan crawled beneath the elevator carriage. His hands shook. He had hidden them during the meeting. Now they would not stop. $5 million. $18 million. His father's name. His father had been right. That should have felt satisfying. Instead, it hurt. Because if Thomas had been right about Cade, maybe Evan had been wrong about Thomas. Not about everything. Thomas had been difficult. Angry, proud. He had missed birthdays because of grudges. Refused help. Held pain like it was evidence. But perhaps the story Evan told himself, that his father ruined his career over nothing, had been easier than admitting a company had taken something from him. His phone buzzed. Piper. He wiped his hand. Answered, Dad? Hey, Mrs. Dobson said school gets out at 3 today because teacher training. Evan looked at the clock. 11:36. He had forgotten. 3? Yeah, you knew? I told you Monday. He closed his eyes. Right, you forgot. No, Dad. Okay. Yes, can you come? I'll be there. Promise? He looked toward the Founders Library, then at the elevator. Promise. He hung up. Glenn shouted from above. Problem? Need to leave by 2:20. Glenn laughed. After today, you can leave whenever you want, not how contracts work. Evan, what? You may be an heir to $18 million. May, and you're worried about contractor hours. Elevator is still broken. Glenn stared. You and your father would have gotten along better than you think. Evan's face hardened. Glenn immediately regretted it. Sorry, Evan returned to the guide shoe. Probably true. At 12:02, the genuine complication arrived. Rachel Penn found him at the elevator. Evan, he slid out. Yeah? We have a problem. He sat up. What? Thomas's claim. He already hated the tone. What about it? We found a release. His stomach dropped. What release? 1989, she handed him a copy. Settlement A and release of ownership claims. Thomas Rourke. Signature at bottom. Payment, $42,000. Evan stared. No, Rachel spoke carefully. If authentic, your father's royalty claim was settled. 42,000, yes, against millions. At the time, much less. He signed? Apparently, Evan looked at the signature. It looked right. Thomas Rourke. Angular T, long final stroke. Evan had seen it on report cards, birthday cards, checks, toolbox labels. He looked at Rachel. Then why was Harlan still calculating royalties? We don't know. Why did he offer Dad $10 million in 2008? We don't know. Why put his claim in the safe? We don't know. Evan laughed once. Useful meeting. Rachel did not react. Gareth produced the document. Evan stopped. From where? Corporate archive. Convenient, I agree. Is that legal advice? No good. She handed him another sheet. The release was witnessed by Edmund Sloan, Gareth's father. Evan stared. Rachel continued. We are sending the original for forensic examination. How long? Days. Board can't wait days. No, what happens? Astor Rowe has given Vivian until tomorrow morning. For the sale. Yes, Evan handed back the copy. Not my problem. Rachel looked at him. Your father's signature is on the document. Then maybe he signed. You don't believe that. Evan picked up his wrench. I don't know what I believe. At 12:31, Vivian found him. She did not come with lawyers. She stood beside the open elevator shaft in a coat that probably cost more than Evan's monthly rent. Evan, he kept working. Rachel told me. Okay, you think Gareth forged it? Evan looked up. I didn't say that. Do you? I think Gareth wants the sale closed. So do I. That surprised him. Still? She leaned against the wall. We have $600 million in expansion debt, I heard. Orders are down 12%. Okay, our debt covenant gets tested next quarter. Meaning? If operating earnings remain this weak, lenders can force asset sales. Evan nodded slowly. So you need Astor Rowe. I need a solution. Same? I hope not. Evan returned to the guide shoe. Vivian watched. How are you doing that? What? Working, Job. Your father may have been cheated out of millions. Elevator still doesn't care. She smiled faintly. Harlan used to say things like that. Don't compare me to billionaires. He wasn't always, neither are most billionaires. She laughed. Then became serious. If Thomas signed the release, the sale can proceed. Evan stopped. And if he didn't, we resolve claims. How? Properly, meaning money and public correction. Evan looked at her. You'd name them. Yes. The 6. Yes, even if it creates patent problems. Vivienne hesitated. There, Evan saw it. You don't know. No, then don't say yes. Her expression tightened. I am trying. My father heard that sentence a lot. She looked hurt. He almost apologized. Didn't. Vivian said, I have 8,000 employees whose lives depend on me making a decision before bankers make it for me. Evan set down his wrench. And the 6? 5 are dead. That's convenient. Her face hardened. That was unfair. Yeah, then why say it? Because you're asking me to feel sorry for the company that erased my father's name. No, you are. I'm asking you to understand why I cannot simply detonate a company to correct something done before I finished elementary school. Evan stared. She continued, I didn't cheat Thomas. No, but I inherited what my father built. Yes, including the debt. Evan looked toward the machine hall. Old photographs, old lathes, old stories made clean by corporate museums, then fix it. How? He looked at her. You're the billionaire. That angered her. Good. She walked away. At 103, Evan finished the elevator. He ran it empty. Up, down, level, brake, doors. Again, Luis rode the second test. Smooth. Evan nodded. Guide shoe. Little thing. Yep. Luis looked toward the library. Little thing stopped big thing. Evan smiled faintly. You remembered. Useful stuff usually boring. Careful, you'll become employable. Luis laughed. Then handed Evan an old photograph. What is this? Found it on the museum wall. Evan looked. Same original 6. But this photograph had labels. Harlan Cade, Arthur Moreno, Joseph Lasky, Samuel Brennan, Walter Dane. The final label, T. Rourke. Someone had placed a small paper over the original typed caption. Evan peeled it slightly. Underneath, Thomas Rourke, CO owner. His heart started beating faster. Where was this? Near First Lathe. Did you remove it? No, that's another copy from archive display folder. Evan stared. Why are you showing me? My grandfather. What? Luis lowered his voice. He remembers your dad. Evan looked up. He's alive? Yeah, 87. Can I talk to him? Luis nodded. Already called. Evan forgot the school pickup for one dangerous second, then checked the time. 1:08. Phone, Luis called. An old voice answered in Spanish. Luis switched languages, then handed Evan the phone. My grandpa. Evan raised it. Mr. Barreto? Who is this? Evan Rourke. Silence, then Tommy's boy. Evan's throat tightened. Yeah, you sound like him. Sorry, the old man laughed. Still funny, too. Evan sat on a crate. Did you work with my father? Many years. At Cade. Yes. Did he sign a settlement in 1989? Silence. Why? There's a paper. What paper? Release? 42,000. The old man made a sound. Not surprise. Disgust? No. Evan's grip tightened. You sure? Tommy would burn 42,000 before signing that. Evan almost smiled. That sounds like him. He was offered. By who? Sloan? Edmund? Yes, what happened? Tommy threw the papers in the coolant tank. Evan closed his eyes, definitely Thomas. Did he ever accept money? No, nothing? He got final wages, that's it? That's it. Did he keep copies of anything? The old man paused. Blue notebook. Evan sat straighter. What? Tommy's blue notebook. What was in it? Everything where? You don't have it? No, he always carried it. Evan thought. His father's tools had been sold after Thomas died. Except one toolbox, Evan had taken it. Most sat in a storage unit. Old micrometers. Files, machinist squares. The brass feeler gauge. Notebooks? Maybe, Mr. Barreto. Did he ever tell you why he didn't sue? The old man laughed sadly. Money. He didn't have any. Exactly, lawyers? Also pride. Evan nodded. That sounds right. He thought Harlan would fix. He didn't. No, a long silence. Then the old man said Harlan came to him later. When? Many years. 2008? Maybe. What happened? Tommy closed door. Evan looked down. Of course. The old man continued. Your father could forgive machines. What? If machine failed, Tommy wanted reason. Evan listened. If man failed, Tommy wanted punishment. That sentence hit hard. Because it described Thomas. And maybe Evan. The call ended. At 1:26, Evan called Piper's school. I might be 10 minutes late. The secretary said she can wait in the office. No, Mr. Rourke. It's fine. I promised. There was a pause. Then be here at 3. I will. He called Glenn. Storage unit. What? I need to leave. Go. Job paperwork, I'll do it. You hate paperwork. I'll hate it heroically. Evan grabbed his toolbox. Vivian appeared near the hall. Where are you going? Storage, why? Notebook, what notebook? My father's. Do you think it proves the release false? Maybe, I'm coming. No. She blinked. What? No, I have a car. I have a van. You have no idea what the document means legally. You have lawyers. Exactly, Evan started walking. Vivian followed. Evan, he stopped. I have to pick up my daughter at 3. Vivian stared. That's why you're rushing? Yes, we're dealing with a $3.8 billion transaction. She gets out at 3. Vivian looked as if she had encountered a new form of mathematics. Fine, she pulled out her phone. My driver will take us. No, it's faster. Evan checked the time. Fine, Vivian smiled. There what? You can compromise. Don't get excited. At 1:41, Evan Rourke and Vivian Cade rode through Pawtucket in the back seat of a black Mercedes. Evan looked uncomfortable. Vivian noticed. You hate the car. No, you're sitting like it's contaminated, not used to someone else driving. That's all? Seats are too clean. She smiled. How old is your daughter? 9, name, Piper, mother? Evan looked out the window. Vivian understood. I'm sorry. 3 years. What happened? Cancer, she nodded. My mother died when I was 12. Evan looked at her. I didn't know. Most people don't. Public biography says she died after a long illness. Yeah, alcohol. Evan said nothing. Vivian continued. My father turned the company into a religion after she died. Work, yes, same you? After Rebecca. Why? Work asks easier questions. Vivian looked at him. That's good. No, why not? Because I almost missed Piper growing up. Vivian sat quietly. Then, my son doesn't speak to me. Evan looked over. You have a son? 24. What happened? Work asks easier questions. Evan almost laughed. She did first. At 1:49, they reached a storage facility. Evan opened Unit 214. Boxes, furniture, Rebecca's old sewing machine, Christmas decorations, Thomas Rourke's red machinist chest. Vivian looked around. This is your father's estate? Most of it. You never went through it? Some. 6 years. Yeah, she did not judge. That helped. Evan opened the chest. Tools? Old calipers. Punches, files, a rusty dial indicator. Bottom drawer. Papers, manuals, 3 notebooks. Red, black, blue. Evan froze. He lifted the blue one, oil-stained cover, TR. His hands began shaking again. Vivian looked at her watch. 1:53. You have time. He opened it. Pages of measurements, gear calculations, sketches, complaints. Thomas wrote exactly the way he spoke. Short, angry, clear. Evan turned pages. HK. Wants week. Sloan offer 42K. No then, 8:17, Edmund brought release. Refused, 8:21, release returned unsigned. 9:3, done. Evan stared. Vivian leaned closer. That proves he refused. His own notes. Not enough alone. Evan turned another page. Something fell out. Carbon copy. Settlement A&D release. Unsigned, across the signature line Thomas had written, not for sale. Evan almost smiled. Then another paper. A letter to Harlan Cade. Harlan, Edmund says you need my signature for the financing. You won't get it. If somebody produces one, it's false. Tom, Vivian whispered, oh. Evan checked time. 1:58, need to go. Take everything. Yeah, at 2:17 they returned to Cade. Rachel Penn reviewed the notebook. Outside counsel photographed every page. The original 1989 release Gareth had produced was pulled from archives. Vivian requested immediate forensic comparison. Then something else happened. Rachel noticed the notary. Cynthia Sloan, Gareth's mother. The settlement had been witnessed by Edmund Sloan, notarized by his wife. The signature supposedly belonging to Thomas Rourke had been processed entirely through Gareth's family. Vivian looked at Gareth across the conference table. You said your father told you nothing. Gareth stared. I said he did not tell me about the current claim. Your mother notarized the release. I was 21. You worked summers at Sloan and Mercer. So? Records show you were document clerk in 1989. Gareth's jaw tightened. Evan watched. Rachel placed another page on the table. Archive intake initials. G. S. Gareth looked at it. Nobody spoke. Rachel continued. You logged this release. Gareth stood. This is ridiculous. Vivian did not move. You knew. I processed thousands of documents. You remembered Thomas Rourke enough to say he let emotion interfere with reality. Silence. Gareth looked at Evan. Mistake, everyone saw. Vivian's voice became cold. Did your father forge Thomas's signature? No. Did you? No. Did you know it was false? No, then sit. He didn't. Vivian looked toward security outside the glass. Gareth sat. At 2:34, preliminary signature comparison returned from Cade's internal document lab. Not conclusive, but suspicious.